You know how it's like pretty accepted that the Eye of Horus is an ancient symbol known all around the world, symbolizing healing, protection, rejuvenation, rebirth, resurrection, wholeness, and spiritual awakening? The Eye of Horus is also a representation of the thalamus of the brain. The Eye of Horus depicts the secret areas of the brain that hold the potential for each human to attain enlightenment, create memory, and control emotion. The thalamus houses the pineal gland, and this gland is considered by some to be the seat of the soul. The symbol, it combines art, anatomy, science, and mythology. It's sometimes called the all-seeing eye, and it's also referenced as the third eye. Well, today I'm going to make an argument that the ancient Aztec war symbol, Atl Tlachinolli, pictured here, is representing the senatorial node. Please watch it to the end. Tell me what you think. Am I completely off base? Have I lost my marbles? If you put that in the comment section, I'm going to leave it up there, so let me know what you think. Or is this possibly another ancient encoded message passed down through the annals of time? Something so important, it had to be woven into the fabric of cultures so that it wouldn't be forgotten. Let's go over it. All right, guys, hello and welcome back to Mysteries Channel. Today's video, we're going to continue connecting the ancient Zeus-like gods, and I'm not going to lie, I'm kind of excited about it because I've never really seen anybody else bring this up, and I want to know, like, am I just making shit up at this point? A quick recap of the gods we've already connected and the attributes that connect them. Zeus, Jupiter, Perun, Dagda, Leshen, Legong, Ka'awil, Teshub, Amon, Thor, and today we're going to talk about Huitzilopotchli. The attributes that connect these gods are lightning, war, cycles of 9 or a correspondence to the number 9, human sacrifice, having oracles dedicated to them with the purpose of military aid, defeating a serpent, caves and mountaintops, oak trees, a connection with royalty or royal power, a hammer or mace, eagles, having a bull associated with the god, and also, oddly, in the very earliest traditions, cannibalism seems to be connected with the ancient rituals and traditions that are attributed to lightning gods. Today, we're going to ancient Mexico. This country is chock full of legends and ancestral rites that revere death. Now, many in the pantheon of deities of the Aztecs were inclined for a fondness of war. However, Huitzilopotchli is known as the primary god of war in ancient Mexico. And since he's one of the patron gods of Mexico, he was credited with both the victories and defeats of the Mexica people on the battlefield. And who exactly are the Mexica in relation to the Aztecs? The people we call Aztecs today are actually the Mexica. Sometimes they are called the Mexica, and I feel like, and I might be wrong, so forgive me if I am, I feel like Mexica was the original way the Mexicans introduced themselves, like, I am Mexica. And then over time, with Spanish influence, it became Mexica. And then I'll tell you exactly what happened, how the Aztec portion came up to be. Now brace yourselves, people, because I'll tell you what, if you didn't hear the names associated with what we're about to talk about, you might get confused and think we're talking some Greek mythology. But no, friends, this is pure old New World. According to various Mexica versions of the stories, their homeland, Aztlan, was a luxurious and delightful place located on a very large lake where everyone was immortal and shared in the abundance of the resources out there. There was a very steep hill in the very center of this lake, and this hill was called Culhuacan. And in the middle of this hill, there were caverns, 7 of them, and they were collectively called the Chicomotztuc. This is where the ancestors to the Aztecs lived. The land was filled with vast quantities of ducks, fish, heron, waterfowl, red and yellow birds, and all around the lake there were these huge trees that provided shade, and it was just, very much a perfect place. In fact, it kind of sounds like the Mexican Golden Age, if you will. But this Golden Age, it was on its way out, and tales of tyrannical rulers called the Azteca Chicomotztoca began to replace the tales of righteousness that were once so abundant in this land. Is this not reminiscent of the Golden Age? Remember Zeus, he kills his own father because he becomes the tyrant. And that brings an end to the Greek Golden Age. The Nahuatl legends relate that the 7 tribes lived in Chicomotztuc, and this is translated as the place of the 7 caves. Each cave represented a different Nahuatl group, Nahuatl being the language group they're all a part of. The golden age began to sour, and the 7 groups, one by one, decide that they're leaving the cave and they're going to start anew south of wherever Aztlan is, who we know today as the Aztec, were the very last group to leave this cave. The Aben Codex says, guided by their priests, the Aztec fled, and on the road, their god Huitzilopotchli forbade them to ever call themselves Aztecs again, telling them that they should now and forever be known as the Mexica. You see, this was a symbolic way to sever and release themselves from the subjugation that they were facing in Aztlan. It is said that the Mexica were instructed by Huitzilopotchli through dreams. He would whisper to them sometimes, he would give them clues, and he was telling them that they were to search for a sign, and that as soon as they saw this sign, they would know where their homeland was. The sign that they've been searching for is an eagle, and this eagle is perched upon a prickly pear tree, and in the mouth of the eagle, it would be holding the Atl Tlachinolli. Now, other legends relay that the eagle would be devouring a snake, but when I'm looking into this, I think that this was a way for the Catholic priests, the Jesuits, to kind of like help convert the Mexica into their new religion. They were, trying to take pieces of their mythology and implant it. And the eagle devouring a snake, has a very Christian ring to it. So I'm not saying that one is over the other, but if I'm going to look at the oldest one, I really do think that the oldest version has the eagle on the prickly pear tree holding the Atl Tlachinolli and not the snake in his mouth. So for generations, the Mexica, they're out there and they're searching for this sign. They know that once they find this sign, they finally have a home. And lo and behold, after searching and searching and searching, they come across the very sign that they've been searching for. And where they found the sign, well, it was one of the very last places that was not claimed by another tribe. It was the swampiest, most boggy land that you could imagine. There was almost no use for this land, and this is what the Aztecs took. This land would become known as Tenochtitlan. And as I said, this is a spot that nobody else wanted, but they made do with it. They found crops that would grow in these conditions. They brought in other arable dirt and they built this little island up. And in a place where nobody else could make it work, nobody else could survive, they survived. In fact, they started to thrive. They were very successful. They built an entire empire. And by the time the conquistadors arrived to Tenochtitlan, the population of the city, and I think this is a very conservative estimate, is around 200,000 people. They grew this city that was beyond compared to any of the other cities in the world at this time. And a lot of people have a hard time wrapping their mind around this, thinking, well, I don't think so, because the Spaniards came in and they just annihilated the Mexicans. There's a lot of parts of that story that aren't fully told. I'll go over it in another separate video, but it's a crazy, fascinating couple of months in history where just all hell breaks loose. But when the conquistadors did come up to Tenochtitlan, you have to know that they must have been awestruck. They had to have been. This city was a sight to behold beyond anything they had ever seen in Europe or even parts of Africa, unless of course they had gone to Egypt. But I'm telling you, I don't know that they had ever seen anything like this. It was a meticulously planned city. The city had aqueducts that brought in fresh potable water and also had a drainage system that actually brought out wastewater. It had very large, wide avenues and boulevards so that people could freely walk around in their city. It had these massive markets and, of course, the architecture that Mesoamerica is famous for. The infrastructure of this city would have blown them away. Tenochtitlan was like if you're trying to really comprehend what Tenochtitlan was like at that point in time, it would be almost like combining the most fabulous parts of Egypt with the ingenuity of the Roman Empire and then sprinkling gold all over the top of it. I'm not even joking. It was almost like it was the premier city of the world at that point in time. The island had grown considerably from that tiny little small island that they had come to. It is believed that the Aztecs showed up around the year 1100 AD. And we know that Montezuma was actually trying to find Aztlan. 500 years later, he had holy envoys going out to all parts of North America looking for Aztlan. In 500 years, he had no idea. None of them had any idea where they come from. Maybe Or maybe it was much longer than 500 years and we somehow down the road have mistranslated something. You know, it'd be really nice to be able to go back to historical record and take a look and see what it says, but we all know what happened to that. Like, that's gone. The island itself was it had a north-south main road and an east-west main road. And where these two main roads converged was the center of the Aztec Empire. Not just the city itself, but the Aztec Empire. They had the 4 parts of the city that were divided into what's called tecpans. And each tecpan or neighborhood had its own district council that would plan and make sure that this portion of the city had all the amenities that were afforded to them, that it was under the same meticulous plan that the other parts of the city were under. Also at the center of this were the main temples, the palaces of the emperors, the palaces of the nobles, marketplaces. There were 2 major schools at this intersection as well. The schools were called the Tlachinolli, which was a school for secular studies, and the Calmecac, which would be like a university for priestly training in the Aztec world. Many credit the scholars named Alexander von Humboldt and William H. Prescott with popularizing the term Aztec, but that is not correct. If you go a little bit further back, you're going to find a man named Francisco Javier Claviero, and he, decades before these gentlemen, actually popularized the term. He was a Jesuit teacher, and I personally believe that he purposely called them Aztecs to relegate them to a mindset in which they had overlords above them, and also to put a wedge between them and their old god, Huitzilopotchli. I'm not going to go into it a lot, but I think we can all see that this is a form of manipulation or even conditioning. It's a great way to break a link to your past, and let's be real, especially when it comes to the Catholic Church, and the Spaniards were working on behalf of the Catholic Church in most of these instances. But I mean, there were land grabs and everything. This is colonization. And in colonization, if you can erase the people's history, they don't have a lot to go back to, but to follow what you're doing. And this is exactly what's happening here. So anyway, the Mexica, they held Huitzilopotchli in the very highest regard. And to appease him, they would sacrifice people by ripping their hearts out. They would stab them in the chest with a very sharp obsidian blade, rip out the still beating heart. The most important ritual they had, this heart would be beating in his hand, and he would hold it up to the people. He would also hold it up to the gods to let Huitzilopotchli know, like, we are feeding you, we're giving you what you need. This important blood. This sacrifice is for you. It was intense. It was a very intense ritual that they performed. Now, Huitzilopotchli, he was a dream whispering war god, and he would whisper direction to you. He also wielded a weapon, and no, it wasn't a hammer. It was called Tzhuicotl, and it was a fire serpent. That's right. I don't know, I'm not 100% sure, but kind of is reminiscent of staff god from Peru, you know what I mean? With the fire serpent as his weapon, he was also a sun god, oddly enough. According to descriptions, Huitzilopotchli was robust, he was strong, he was warlike, he was the destroyer of towns and of men. His emblem was the dragon's head that spewed fire from its mouth, Tzhuicotl, the weapon I just told you about. He could also transform himself into different birds and beasts. His spirit animal was the eagle, but he was also associated with hummingbirds, which were the souls of dead warriors. Huitzilopotchli's name actually translates to hummingbird of the south or hummingbird of the left-hand side. It was said that if you died a warrior's death, which would be on the battlefield with bravery or in childbirth, you would then go to live in Huitzilopotchli's palace upon death. It was said that he was so bright that you could not see him. You had to avert your eyes. He would blind you with his brightness, and that only the very most brave warriors could see him, because as they would hold their shields up to cover and shield their eyes, wherever there were holes from arrows and spear marks in their shields, they could sneak little peeks of their god through those holes. And even though he is a sun god, he is an emblem of darkness because he is always chasing it. He's called to it, you know what I mean? He's in constant struggle with the darkness. And in this struggle, he requires nourishment in the form of sacrifices. And these sacrifices are to ensure that the sun would survive the cycle of 52 years. Now, throughout Mesoamerica, the Americas in general, 52 or even 5,200, it's a very important basis to the mythology of the area. And it has to do with the world cycles that occur and the cataclysms that destroy it. Basically, the Nuahas feared that the world would end or had the potential to end every 52 years. And so these sacrifices to Huitzilopotchli were to protect themselves from the infinite night that they thought was coming, because 4 creations had already been annihilated and they were trying to stop this one from being annihilated. The blood of the heart. And I propose that the electrical component to all of this was extremely important. Aztecs believed that they could give strength to Huitzilopotchli through human blood, and they would postpone the end of the world this way. Legend goes that the fierce goddess named Atl Tlachinolli was impregnated while sweeping near a ball of hummingbird feathers, becoming impregnated with Huitzilopotchli. Well, Atl Tlachinolli, she had about 400 sons and 1 daughter, and when they found out their mother was impregnated, they were furious and they started planning her murder. They were gonna take her out. Huitzilopotchli, he's in her womb and he's aware of all that is going on. And as they're plotting to kill their mom, he bursts through her womb, fully grown, fully armored, and he attacks his siblings. He beheads his sister, throws her body down a mountainside, and then chases the brothers. In the Aztec worldview, the brothers are the stars in the sky. Huitzilopotchli, he is the sun, the head of the sister, that's the moon. And you can see that Huitzilopotchli, he's going to need a lot of blood to continuously chase them around the earth. Now, experts say there are very few remaining archaeological representations of Huitzilopotchli. Shocker. There's not a lot left in the Americas. Like, the Spanish were thorough, you know? But here, this is called a Zacatepayoli box. And this was used to collect the still beating hearts out of the chests of the people that were sacrificed. And on this box, you can see this is showing Huitzilopotchli as the deity completing an act of self-sacrifice. Of the sacrifices, many believe that it was an honor. Like, if you were captured in war and you were going to be sacrificed, it was an honorable way to die. And it wasn't just that they sacrificed people that they caught in war. There were many, many kinds of sacrifices made, and there were many bloodlettings. The emperors and the nobles of South America, they brutalized themselves in many different ways to let blood out, to appease the gods. And all of them truly believed that they were doing this for the good of the people, for the good of the empire, for the world. They were saving the world. That's what this was to them. Oh, I just want to show you guys this right here. See this? You see the eagle perched atop of the prickly pear tree? And look at that. There's no snake in that eagle's mouth. That, my friends, that is called the Atl Tlachinolli. This is the Mexican war banner. This is what it also looks like right here. And they say that this is the symbol in the language of the Mexica, the language being Nahuatl, is Atl Tlachinolli, meaning water burnt or burning water, or some say it's scorched earth. I'm not 100% sold on it. Scorched earth, I feel like, is a stretch. They are just trying to make a connection between the war banner and war. It translates as water burnt, but to me, water burnt may mean blood. It's like another way of saying blood. It's like fire and water. Maybe it has to do with the liquidity of blood and the color red for fire. The Atl Tlachinolli typically consists of 2 opposite elements, literally water and fire, forming 2 streams. The fire is a stream, which lends me more towards the blood thing again, right? They feel like each element is a source of energy, of life force, but can also be destructive. This, my friends, it's true, right? We know that. Here's the thing though. Is it weird though that another war god, like all the other war gods we've talked about so far, is connected to electricity, has a fondness for the heart and the blood that it produces? It shows up all over the world. We think there's so much mythology out there, but there's one story being told. The names are different. That's it. The craziest part this whole thing to me is that it makes me feel like the ancients knew that there was an electrical system in the heart. Just like the ancient Egyptians knew that the thalamus contained the pineal gland and that this gland has the ability for you to have a spiritual awakening. The ancient Aztecs knew that this part of the heart produced electricity. I'm going to show you this. This is the electrical system of the heart. The heart itself has 4 luminary valves and 5 components. Add those 2 up, you get the number 9. And I know that's a stretch, but it is a 9 there, people. So in this right here, it shows you that the sinotrial node, also known as the SA node, and I'll circle it and I'm going to try to highlight it in a way that it's a little bit more easy to see. But do you see this right here? It looks to me like the Atl Tlachinolli. It really friggin' does. Like, it's what I see now. So beneath the SA node is the atrioventricular node, the AV node. And then we have the left bundle branch and the right bundle branch of the atria. And then down here, we have the Purkinje fibers. These are the 5 chambers of the heart. In the simplest terms, the heart is a pump. It's made of muscle tissue. Like all muscle, the heart needs a source of energy and oxygen to function. The heart's pumping action is regulated by an electrical conduction system that coordinates the contraction of the various chambers of the heart. An electrical stimulus is generated by the sinus node, also called the sinoatrial node or the SA node. This is a small mass of specialized tissue located on the upper chamber, the atria of the heart. The SA node generates an electrical stimulus 60 to 100 times per minute under normal conditions. The atria are then activated. The electrical stimulus travels down through the conduction pathways and causes the heart's ventricles to contract and pump out blood. The 2 upper chambers of the heart, the atria, are stimulated first and contract for a short period of time before the 2 lower chambers of the heart, the ventricles.